No one understands Vinland Saga, and that's okay. I've been wanting to make this video because Vinland Saga Season 2 is happening right now, and for years, people were saying that Season 2 was going to be the most divisive season of an anime ever, especially if people loved Vinland Saga, because it does take quite a drastic turn. And in this video, I kind of want to talk about that. I want to talk about what Season 2 does, why it does it. I will try and keep it minimal spoilers in terms of what has happened in Season 2, and just give you a general idea of where Season 2 is heading and the kind of direction it's going with. So to begin with, when Vinland Saga first premiered, it was considered a successful anime. People were enjoying it, people had a lot of fun watching it, people were very much engaged in it. A lot of what made Vinland Saga great in terms of the manga went kind of mainstream, most specifically Askeladd. He was probably the most mainstream character of the entire season. I think a lot of the most popular YouTube clips of Vinland Saga of Season 1 were just Askeladd moments. And of course, the odd Thorfinn rage moment, which a lot of people kind of gravitated towards as well. And I finished all Vinland Saga, I think within 2 months, and I was loving it. I was like so hooked on it. And I especially loved what is considered now the Season 2, which is the farm arc. A lot of people, depending on who you ask in the community, people will say Kettle Farm arc is the pinnacle of Vinland Saga. We jumped the shark at the Kettle Farm arc for a lot of people. A lot of people will say that the Kettle Farm arc was the precursor to everything. A lot of people will say that the first culmination of what is Season 1 in Vinland Saga, at least in the manga, is just a prologue and shouldn't be considered the first major arc of the series. Whether you not agree with some of these statements is kind of not really the point of this video. It's mostly just to talk about what people think of Season 2, who are both manga readers and anime watchers seeing it for the very first time. Now, when it comes to Vinland Saga Season 2, a lot of the things that people said before it was even announced or before it even came out was that anime watchers are going to be very interesting to watch as they watch Season 2, because Season 1 of what people know is Thorfinn, the main character, trying to get revenge on Askeladd, who he follows his orders so that he can challenge him to a one-on-one honorable duel and kill him to avenge his father. He will never assassinate Askeladd because that is unworthy, it's unhonorable. He wants to beat him one-on-one in combat to avenge his father. And he is obsessive of this. So obsessive that he is just unhinged to kill anyone in his way in order to kill Askeladd. Whatever it is, he's willing to save Askeladd's life so that no one else can kill him before he does. So Season 1 culminates in Thorfinn following these orders, experiencing all these different characters and perspectives, learning a bit about his father and some other things. But at the end of Season 1, Askeladd is killed by someone else, and Thorfinn can't stop it. He is trying to get Askeladd to fight him right before he dies, but he dies in his arms. Thorfinn goes through a psychotic breakdown, he's put into slavery after trying to attack the King Canute, and Season 2 begins, where Thorfinn is a husk of a human being who is trying to deal with the fact that nothing good has ever happened in his life, and he was never able to get any satisfaction from killing the man who killed his father. Season 2 of Vinland Saga, instead of being a story about opposing factions fighting in warfare, killing each other, outmaneuvering each other, outwitting each other, Thorfinn being an edgy teenager trying to kill this massive hulking Thorkill Giga Chad, instead the story is about him being a slave and farming. Just standard Stardew Valley, standard Minecraft vibes, where he literally is a slave who cuts down trees and just makes land more open, and then they can make farm. That is it. That is what Season 2 is essentially about. Of course, I'm simplifying it, but a lot of what Season 2 is about is more of the internal conflict that happens with Thorfinn, less about the actual combat that takes place. Right now in Season 2, they've had an infamous scene of Thorfinn getting slashed at and being attacked by a character snake. That's a bit of action, and I'll tell you that there is some action later on, but it's not the same as what Season 1 action is, because what Season 2 is trying to do is say to the viewer, look at how warfare can affect the characters. Look at how warfare affects every character in Season 2, whether it be Einar, whether it be Thorfinn, whether or not be the Kettles themselves who own slaves, whether or not be Kettle's sons, one who hasn't seen warfare and one who has seen warfare. Snake himself, a mercenary who was hired by Kettle Farm. So many characters in Season 2 are products of warfare, of battle. battle of people who are just trying to get more power and utilize others to their ends. It even shows again with King Canute and Thorkil how warfare is something that is wanting to be consumed by some people and others are just the victims of it. Thorfinn is the one caught in the middle where he propagated warfare and he was also a victim of it. Now with season 2, a lot of the story is intrapersonal moments of Thorfinn trying to understand who he is, why he was like this, why does he wish to keep living, what was he doing all those years trying to get revenge, why is it all a blank, why can he not remember the faces of people he's killed. A lot of people who really like the action of Vinland Saga Season 1 do not seem to be happy with Vinland Saga Season 2. There are a lot of videos on YouTube where people are talking about how they hated Vinland Saga Season 1 because they didn't like Thorfinn as a main character because of how one-sided he is, how he's very straightforward goal of just wanting to kill Askeladd. And that is a fair criticism, I would argue. Thorfinn is not really a compelling character just because his father was killed, but Thorfinn is much more of a compelling character in Season 2 because he starts to change. He starts to understand things about himself. Season 2 of Thorfinn is a very much slow building of change. Season 1 is kid, loses father, pretty much stagnates and stays pretty much the same all throughout Season 1, which I understand why is a criticism for some people not liking Thorfinn in Season 1. That's kind of the point of the story. And I know people don't like the thing of, I get the point, I just don't care. Which is a fair argument. I guess you can watch whatever you want or read what you want. But that is the one criticism that people had in Season 1. And some people in Season 2 are also having annoyances that it's not action-packed. To which leads to my idea that people don't really understand Vinland Saga, what it is that Season 2 is trying to say. I do think there are probably people out there who are annoyed that it's not as action-packed as Season 1, and I understand that. There are people who really like Attack on Titan Seasons 1 to 3, and really don't like Season 4. I get it. They just want Eren to be the protagonist and the hero. I do think it's very easy to see how people would not understand Vinland Saga Season 2 from the get-go, because they're so used to what it is that they see in front of them with other anime and manga. I know so many people who were not a fan of Attack on Titan Season 4, not because of a time skip, or not because of how long it took to get out, but they didn't like the idea that new characters were being introduced, which showcased a new side of a conflict they weren't comfortable with. I think a lot of people who don't like Vinland Saga Season 2 or like the direction of where the story is actually heading are people who don't really enjoy the idea of a story being very grey. They don't like the idea of a story showing things that maybe they're not comfortable with, or at least have an idea of what they thought it was already. Vinland Saga does this great thing where when you first start reading the manga, you see violence and you think, man, that's fucking intense and gory and crazy. But then when you get to the farm arc, you see it in a different light. You go back and you flip through old pages and you're like, oh, this was actually really horrific. The violence that I've seen. I just didn't think it was the point of the story until you see how it affects the main character. When you start to see Thorfinn understand what it meant to kill people and how it affects his mental health, you start to see that anytime someone gets killed or attacked in Vinland Saga, it has much more weight to it. The effects of death, the effects of violence are so much more intense than they ever were beforehand. I think a lot of people start to realize that, especially when they watch a show like Attack on Titan with Season 4. They're introduced to characters who are meant to be the bad guys, but then they start to realize that they are just humans just like us, and that they're just born on a different side of a wall. And a lot of people don't like that because when you watch shonen or you see a lot of anime and you see a lot of cool characters doing cool shit, your mind immediately thinks to go, well, they're the good guy, they're the bad guy. That's it. But there are stories out there who don't want you to see it that way, or at least they want to show you how easy it is to think that way, but it's actually quite impossible to live in a world like that. And I think it's something that Vinland Saga does really well. Now, there are a lot of people who criticize Vinland Saga in terms of the later chapters in the manga, which I won't spoil, but people like to discuss how Thorfinn, as he grows and understands the effects of violence and warfare and how it's something that he doesn't want to enable, people start to see that, oh, well, this would never work in real life. It's impossible to stop warfare It's just not going to happen. This is very unrealistic. To which I understand that where that comes from. And that's a totally different discussion to have in terms of understanding what Vinland Saga is about and whether or not it is something that does tell the story in a unique way, or at least tell the story in a realistic way. I think when it comes to manga and anime, the goal isn't to be realistic, but maybe portray parts of our life that are realistic in a way in which we can consume and understand in an easy way. To tell something that has a very strong theme, you have to go on the side of not being realistic. And to tell the story of Vinland Saga about how war affects us in terms of how we perceive it, how we perceive violence, and show how horrific warfare is, which it is. It can be something that's really uncomfortable for people because it's not what they expect when they watch the show. And I understand that. When you watch Vinland Saga, the very first thing you see is warfare. When you first read Vinland Saga, the first panels you see are warfare. But that's what's great about it, is that those are the first panels you see, and it's trying to show you the world you're in. And I know that it may sound very typical to make a video calling someone stupid for not understanding what Vinland Saga is about. That's not really my goal here. If you're someone who watches the anime, and you're someone who's very, very annoyed about the structure and where it's going, I just urge you to keep watching and keep an open mind. Try and think about the character as someone who is growing, someone who is changing. Because the way I see Thorfinn from the beginning of the story to now are two completely different people. And that's what I personally love. I think if Vinland Saga Season 2 hits home and really gets people behind Season 2 and what's to come, I think we're going to have a really great anime adaptation that wasn't possible with some of these other ones. And I can't wait for people to see the end of Season 2, or at least what transpires later as violence starts to kind of creep back up. And I think maybe having a lot of criticisms of what you think the story should be about is a fair criticism to have, because it's not what you expected. But that's what expectations are, because you expect one thing and you'll get something else completely different. I can't remember what it was like when I first saw that Thorfinn was starting to become a very docile character, but it made me really excited to see who else he could be, because at first season of Vinland Saga, he's a very almost one-dimensional character. He's someone who is just full of vengeance and hatred. If you look at a lot of other popular shonen, I would argue that Eren Yeager is somewhat of a very one-dimensional character in like the first 2 seasons. It's only when he starts to realize that he's not the protagonist, or at least that he is not special or he was chosen, he starts to realize how his idea of wanting to save the world from Titans was a stupid one. And that's why he becomes such an interesting character, not only from Season 3 upon realizing this, but currently now into Attack on Titan with the newest season. He is a very different character from what we first learned, and that's what's so exciting about him. I think the same case goes with Thorfinn. They go in 2 completely different directions, but the growth of how they get there is very similar, going from being a one-dimensional character to a multi-dimensional character. I think it's one of the best things about Vinland Saga, and I can't wait for people to see more. As much as people criticize how much they think the series has kind of slowed down, I would argue that people had the same criticisms probably when those chapters were released, where suddenly battling within England and now you're on a farm, and that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. But that's what I think. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. If you're an anime watcher and you've only watched the anime and you kind of have criticisms about where it's heading, or you're not sure where it's heading, or you want to give it a bit of a go, let me know. For people who read the manga, you know. Or you could tell me whether or not you think the anime is doing a good job of adapting it. That's all from me, guys. I appreciate if you made it to the end of the video, and if you'd like, please give it a like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And that's all from me. My name's Mugen. As always, have a good one.